So I'm going to have the guys introduce themselves. So we've worked together. A couple of us have worked together in various capacity. But Jerry, why don't you do a quick intro of yourself?
Hi, I'm Jerry Rocha. I'm the Managing Director of Business Intelligence at Time Warner Cable. Really, the fancy word for talking about our set-top box data, but also our customer data, and kind of indexing everything the customer does back to their profile. So it's set-top box, it's internet, it's Wi-Fi, it's all these different areas. And really, it's a big data play, and how we're enhancing the what we know about the customer with what they do.
Lewis.
So I'm Lewis Roberts. I'm Executive Director of Product Development for Cox Communications, and I have responsibility for the out-of-home access, broadband access. We are deploying Metro Wi-Fi across the country, and benefiting primarily our HSI subscribers. And so we look at this as in terms of on-the-go access. We want to be able to have our customers, give our customers the ability to connect not only in the home, but also outside of the home. So we're looking at creative ways to bring that to the customer in really high traffic areas, entertainment zones, and also look at cost savings to them from the standpoint of their mobile plays that they may have in play as well. So that space, as well as the MDU space, I get involved with.
Thank you. Vince?
Hi, Vince Pandolfi, Consulting Systems Engineer with Cisco Systems. I've been involved with Wi-Fi at Cisco since we made our Aeronet acquisition back in 1999. And I've worked in many of the verticals, including enterprise, retail, the sports venues, et cetera. And for the past 10 years or so, I've been working pretty exclusively with the cable providers deploying their outdoor and indoor hotspots.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. And so I've got the questions on my cell phone, so it might look like I'm checking my email, but I really have the questions on here, so bear with me. But Jerry, I'll direct the first question to you, and this is kind of a softball, but it is, where is the value in public Wi-Fi deployments today?
Well, it's hard unless you're on an airplane. It's hard to charge for Wi-Fi, so you have to figure out a way to make it pay for itself. From our perspective, it's really looking at it's having the ubiquity for the customer. So if they're one of your customers, they can get connected anywhere. And so it's kind of table stakes. How we've looked at ways to build value out of it is developing the data set and looking at who's connecting, where they're connecting. It goes back to this whole idea of like location services, but it's really not. It's really much more of being able to provide through our network is that this person's in an X location. We can give you a key that says, or in the dynamic insertion standpoint, we can say, okay, we can make this ad available to you, to an open exchange, so they can put something in there for a local standpoint, and we feel that that's a great way to make money on it. Granted, it may be not even our page, but we can be on a private or an open exchange that identifies the customer's location, and I think that becomes a big key. And we can also track them over time to figure. How much time do they spend in the home? How much time do they spend outside the home? On what devices? So there's a lot of different data points you can develop with this.
Okay, so I heard a couple of examples of services. There's value in services. So when we talk about value is not necessarily just driving revenue. There may be short-term opportunities to drive revenue, but there may be longer-term plays as well. So we'll likely hear more of that this evening. But is that kind of accurate? You had a couple of examples of their long-term plays. Well, I think that
there are long-term parts and there are short-term. So long-term, I think developing this view over time that you can that the access or the use of Wi-Fi further develops your customer profile within our DMP. That becomes more valuable. We can look at locations that are driving the most traffic. We can look at where those locations are. And you can see this today. I mean, we don't have a service like this yet, but even Comcast does it with a Comcast Business Class, where they look at, and you guys may have this as well, I'm not sure, where you can actually start to put ads on those pages. And so that becomes a value add to the business customer, because then it becomes a marketing tool for them that we can provide. So there's and as this grows, that this is going to be more valuable.
Okay. Before I go to the next question, any follow-up or comments that you guys wanted to add on that one?
Well, I think he, hit it on the head, and I'll just add a couple of things there, and we may kind of get down the path. But, from Cox's standpoint, cable has changed in terms of the way that people connect to the internet. Very rarely now do you have someone with a PC and a hardwire connection connecting to our gateway in the home. However, when we as a company actually supported that, we would say, well, your gateway is working. However, they weren't concerned about the gateway. They were concerned about the end user experience. So we had to change the way that, one, we supported the customer in terms of how they connect to the internet, and recognize that people are no longer connecting the way that we used to service them and expect them from that particular standpoint. So Wi-Fi became a central theme from the standpoint of, one, our company is changing to more of a Wi-Fi connected company. From a value standpoint, we look at things like truck rolls. We end up doing a lot more in terms of truck rolls to service customers for problems that we think are gateway related and they're Wi-Fi related. And so now, when we look at getting a better experience in terms of connecting to Wi-Fi in the home as well as outside the home, we're able to have some value savings from the standpoint of how we actually support the network from that particular standpoint. So, even internally within the company, there's value from the standpoint of transitioning how we run and operate and service our customers so that they have a better experience, and then obviously that leads to a longer or a better loyalty in terms of our customers with us.
Mm-hmm. Great point. Vince, any other general observations?
Well, the early adopters in the cable MSO space were struggling with the business justification for making the original deployments. And at the time, one of the early reasons was for subscriber retention, right? It was extending the broadband experience outside the home, make that fixed connection more valuable once you left, because you were typically outside of your home more than 8 hours a day, right? So those early adopters have, in some cases, proven that business model very valuable. As more and more cellular data minutes are consumed, more, especially in my household, I make sure, more of the devices are Wi-Fi enabled, so we chew up less of those cellular data minutes. And so when the broadband charges increase for my fixed cable broadband at home, I can live with a moderate increase on those charges. But it's really about extending the broadband experience. And now I think more and more of the service providers are looking at other ways to monetize that, including the analytics and location services, the ad revenue, things like that. But I think in the end, I think it's the value to the subscriber that this monthly bill I pay is worthwhile to me when I leave my home. I can watch video over it. I can use it to avoid my cellular data minutes, et cetera.
Okay, great insights. Thank you. So, Louis, the second question is, are public Wi-Fi network investments driven by customer retention for cable companies or other means?
Well, I think that's a part of it. So as I talked about earlier, transitioning how we connect customers to our network. We did a lot of research in terms of consumer insights and to help us understand what customers actually wanted out there. And one of the things that resonated at the top of the list was they wanted to be able to connect wherever they were. They didn't necessarily want to have to depend on multiple companies to service them from that standpoint. They wanted our service to be able to follow them to a great extent, So, we looked at opportunities for how we could leverage our assets to get that connectivity above and beyond just the home, right? So when we looked at entertainment zones, parks, small businesses, restaurants, we found that this generation, particularly the millennial generation, and if you have small kids and nowadays you have to send them a text in order for them to respond. You call, it goes straight to voicemail, right? So definitely the consumer has changed in terms of what their expectation is and how they connect to the network. So we definitely see a value in terms of retention because that's a demand in terms of what customers want. We see a value in terms of creating a platform that can enable other activities as well. So, we talked about analytics a little earlier here, and I think we're still very early on it. But if there's a way that not only can we connect customers to the network, but we can communicate out information that they can be they can use. Whether it's social media, whether it's advertising, whether it's other things in that particular vein. I think it provides a better customer experience, a better use experience, and ultimately a better customer for Cox.
Mm-hmm. All right, great answer. Thank you. Any other observations from a retention or related to retention?
Well, I think I touched a little bit before. I mean, as a cable broadband subscriber who is continuously bombarded by my fixed line telco carrier with incentives on a daily basis, I basically look and say, okay, well, add up the costs and it's equal. But what does this guy give me? This guy gives me, and this is public information, it's on the advertisement airwaves in New York, 1 million plus hotspots, right? And with the cable consortium, it's closer to 20 million hotspots around the country, and I travel a lot for business. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, that is my value add that they're providing me that keeps me from moving subscribers. Mm-hmm. So it's just personal experience.
And, I think we're at a point where we're about to see a further explosion in the availability of these hotspots. It's almost like table stakes at this point to have, if you have a venue where the public congregates, you have to have good Wi-Fi. There's and we're building a stadium that's going to have state-of-the-art, literally state-of-the-art services in this, where you're going to be able to connect while you're there. And there was a great article that came out in the Times about 4 or 5 months ago, and this restaurant was trying to figure out why they're getting such bad reviews on slow service. So they put a camera in there to watch what happened. And the fact is they were having a 20 to 30 minute delay in table turns because people were taking pictures of their food. And they would get there and take pictures of their food, and so they recognize the fact that you have, and I was talking earlier about like facilities like Avalon that have gigabit connections, so you can go there, watch broadband TV while you're having your glass of wine on the patio. And so these are becoming, it's becoming almost a marketing point to say, we've got great internet connection. You can come and connect here and stream video, or do Periscope, or be live on Facebook. And so these are becoming, this is the way people are interacting now socially. And when you're interacting socially, you're going to interact digitally socially as well. And having that connectivity is key.
Great point. Never looked at it from that perspective in the restaurant. You're in a fine restaurant. People want to enjoy the time, and it's more about the experience and less so about the table turns. The consumers and customers certainly aren't looking at it from the operator perspective in the restaurant example. So, great point. So Vince, next question is directed to you. What are the opportunities for new service streams on CableWiFi services?
Well, I think we've touched on certainly extending the broadband experience, so that was the initial thrust. But the internet has also changed in the 10 plus years that the SP Wi-Fi deployment's been out there. And one of the driving factors for a couple of network upgrades that I worked on was the ability to deliver the streaming video content to those edge devices, to those hotspots. So certainly video's been consumed now more on these Wi-Fi hotspots. And then I see, I think Jerry mentioned a little bit, more of the location services, more interactive applications that are targeting the consumer based on who they are and where they are. So you'll see that to start to grow out there. And our friends at Apple have certainly pushed the envelope with the voice calling. Many people complain, gee, the cellular provider is good, but when I'm at home, it's not so good, right? So they fixed that, right? Mm-hmm. Although T-Mobile was an early adopter, Apple basically pushed the envelope for everybody now. And I think it was Verizon who was pledged to be one of the last to do voice calling. About a month and a half ago, I was notified on my Samsung phone that Wi-Fi calling is now available on my Verizon phone. So they actually beat AT&T to the punch. I think voice over Wi-Fi, although it's been out, I mean, I did my first voice over Wi-Fi deployment back in 2002. I think it's actually mainstream now that your cell phones are able to seamlessly hand off over a Wi-Fi connection.
And being in the New York area, Cablevision's up there as well, so they've been doing Wi-Fi first, right, as an option.
Yeah, they had launched a product that was a Wi-Fi only device, and I think a little of it was misunderstood at first. People were saying, "Well, gee, it doesn't work everywhere." So, okay, it's a Wi-Fi phone. Although I think what happened was the target audience was meant to be, the teenage kids who wanted a cell phone experience, but not necessarily a cell phone bill. And that was probably misconstrued by some of the people who bought the phone thinking they could use it everywhere, right? And so I think maybe another paradigm shift in the industry where the next generation MVNOs in the past never worked out too well, right? Because there's usually only one way. I brought the cellular guy subscribers, and I added more money on my customer's bill, right? That didn't really work out for anybody too well. But now that I can offer indoor broadband footprint, which is very tough to get from a wireless carrier's perspective, now the indoor broadband providers have something to offer that relationship. So I see a paradigm shift coming down the road where indoor broadband providers will be able to work with outdoor wireless providers and be able to provide a seamless experience to the end user and ubiquity of all those services.
Okay. Guys, any other, value added? Any other value-added services that you can think of?
I think also we have to look how we're evolving, So it's getting to the point now where the end user doesn't want to know or have to think about, am I on Wi-Fi, am I on cellular, am I on Zigbee for a connected device or whatever. They just want the best experience. So they want one network or want a network that works to give them the best experience based on, one, what application or service that they're delivering, two, what area or geography that they're actually in, and then in some cases too, and we may get to this, but based on time of day, what's giving me the best rate, right? So I think when you look at Wi-Fi as a component to improving the experience of how people consume data, that in itself is a value-add service or a value-add component that can definitely benefit. The other thing, I would add to it as well is the whole connected devices as well. So I think that has a space because of the chipset cost and Wi-Fi versus the chipset cost on LTE, where that can also be a benefit in terms of how we connect telemedicine or telehealth and the Fitbits and things we run around with, how they actually connect back to the network.
Yeah, great point. I've seen, just in the devices we put together and some of the prototypes, multi-radio devices now are dirt cheap, right? Whereas before it was cost prohibitive to have even just a single radio or dual radio type device. So it's really, prices have dropped like a rock.
And the thing that it gets, it's probably my personal annoyance, and I'm sure everybody in the audience as well, a lot of people, that there needs to be a token that automatically switches you over, because I have to look, it's like, well, am I on LTE, so I don't get complaining notes about Verizon that I'm 75% of my data allotment, that it switches over to Wi-Fi, a secure Wi-Fi network automatically when possible, that I don't have to go and say, yes, I agree to your terms and conditions, blah, blah, blah. Because that really does kind of screw the experience. And when I talk about the experience, it is, and one of the things that I've been thinking about more and more, because I have to do this, is even FaceTime shopping. If I'm not allowed to go buy a pair of glasses without my wife's approval, so I have to be in the glasses store and say, what about these? What about these? What about these? And it's not pictures. It's kind of like live. She's like, oh, look at those to the left. And then you see that more and more. So I was at Warby Parker, and there were probably 5 or 6 people in there doing video shopping. And they had, it's like, what do you think about these glasses? And they have a selfie booth in there. And so they kind of got it. So if you go to Warby Parker, there's a selfie booth that you can go take pictures of the glasses and share them with your friends immediately. And so these are the types of things that are taking place. And you want to have, and I look at it because, I pay my wireless bill, but millennials, they don't have that view that it should be connected all the time, and I don't care how it's connected. So it needs to be, or better be, connected all the time.
It's funny you mentioned that. I was at Lax World last night. My son cracked his head on his lacrosse pole. He's a D pole. So I just stopped by there after work. He was still at practice, lit it up via FaceTime, and didn't know if we could even make a purchase like that. It's usually a pretty personal decision to figure out which head goes with which pole, right, for lacrosse. But it worked out, and fortunately, one of the guys behind the desk was another dad that he had played with summer ball. So, but yeah, it changes the whole experience around shopping.
I have Wi-Fi shopped, I will admit that.
Well, that's a good question, though. Think about it, and I bring this up all the time, that I go, some of the things we can do wasn't even thought about a couple of years ago, and I'm sure a lot of you have Wi-Fi shopped or connected, like, which thing do I get? Tell me.
I keep telling my kids, when I was a kid, to FaceTime somebody, you had to drive to New York City to an AT&T office, and the people on the other end had to drive to a city to an AT&T office, and then you got to video chat with somebody. Yep. I said, you don't understand the technology you have available to you today.
It's incredible. Great examples, thank you. Back to Jerry. Jerry, what are the opportunities for the ecosystem partners and our third-party service vendors?
We have the infrastructure pieces, and I think you have the service pieces. And these become, fairly interesting because, if you think about it from a service standpoint, the location vendors that are out there, Yelp or, even Google, Facebook, they all want to know where you are, what you're doing, and are you a connection, and then really kind of level their services based on what you can provide at that time. Can I give you live video? Can you go? I keep forgetting it. What's the Facebook term? You go. Was it live now? It's like what's the thing like? Facebook Live. That's what it's called. It's like Facebook Live. But periscoping. So all these different aspects that you want to get to the service level, and it's like where you are at the time. So there will be, and if I were smart enough to figure out what the next model is going to be, the next startup for essentially mobile live video, other than as a service, I gotta start thinking about it, because that's where I think this is all going. You're connected live all the time with a high-speed broadband connection. So when you think about it, other than being able to do personal stuff or actually be able to watch games live or whatever, I think that there are some cool services that are coming. The thing I'm most interested about, though, is what is going on at this stadium. I know I bring it up again, but the fact is that you're trying to get someone into the stadium, they're paying a lot of money for it, and you're going to give them special services around that experience. So you're going to be able to watch a different version of the playback, or you're going to be able to have a different TV. You're going to be able to get a different experience than someone gets while they're watching it. And if you go back to this idea that the NFL is making billions of dollars selling this to TV, but they still have to have people in the stadiums, and how do you make that stadium experience, and the fact that I'm probably dropping $250, $300 to go to the stadium, how that new experience is going to happen. I think that will happen across the board at these venues. I think every venue is going to have an experience like that to make people get up and come out. Mm-hmm. So.
Great segue to the next question. Vince, you've done a lot of work in major arenas and/or stadiums. So what's your experience like? What do you see coming on the horizon, around the corner, as well as kind of the local? Are you plugged into the local stadium that's being built out as well?
I'm not involved in the local work here. I've worked with several large indoor arenas and a few outdoor arenas. It's interesting. I think the biggest change I've seen over the years was the estimate of uptake. When we first started doing arenas and venues, we had about a 5% take rate on the Wi-Fi. Most recent numbers now are 45 to 55% of the audience now is getting on Wi-Fi, which is a tremendous amount of bandwidth increase. From a capacity perspective, the challenge that is much denser access point deployment to be able to hit those user densities, and then the ability to micro-segment those RF signals so that you're able to give the data rates without as much interference with the neighboring users. I think one of the good things about that type of take rate is we don't experience as much of the co-channel interference that we used to. I mean, I remember when the iPhone 3 first came out, it had this notorious need to go into ad hoc mode. So I was in a very large venue in New York when we had somewhere around 10,000 iPhones in ad hoc mode. So at the time, it was like having 10,000 access points walk into your venue.
Yeah.
So from a spectrogram, the Wi-Fi saturation all over the place. Positive notes are with the adoption of 802.11ac. Majority of devices shipping today are 802.11ac. Very good uptake on 5 gigahertz. So we have a lot more channel capacity available to us, much higher data rates with AC, so we can get a lot better user experience. And as Jerry was saying, you know, people want these real-time video experiences. Well, video chews up, you know, bandwidth. And so the ability for the technology to deliver those higher bandwidths is very important. And again, the location services. You know, people are now ordering custom meals. Well, you know, biggest things about these stadiums now, it's not a hot dog anymore. It's, you know, sushi or, you know, your bucket of ribs or whatever you want at your seat. And, you know, the ability to find those. Other services are, you know, halftime's coming up, you know, which bathroom is least crowded? You know, just interesting services like that. But the biggest challenge for us is really getting those a high density of Wi-Fi deployments and to meet these higher bandwidth requirements that the applications are going to be chewing up.
Are you seeing any drone integration in the stadium?
Luckily, I think the FAA has banned drones from operating in stadiums, but you know, we're seeing a lot of interesting deployments. We have a couple of venues where they looked at putting APs under seats. We have others where we're just looking at, you know, better antenna designs to better target these locations. So
Yeah, you were talking earlier about configurations, right? Different configurations that you had to come up with in different types of venues, right?
yeah, I mean, you know, one thing, you know, the Wi-Fi people have always had to deal with, unlike the cellular guys, is you can't control the device that comes on your network. You know, cellular has always had the pleasure of producing a list of acceptable devices that, you know, they would put a SIM card into, but unfortunately, the Wi-Fi providers have never had that luxury. You know, it's Wi-Fi certified. I bought it at the Best Buy. I want to use it on this network, and these guys have to deal with that. You know, and you're trying to build out a network. You know, you have this variety of client devices, and that's been one of the bigger challenges that they've certainly had to face.
Okay. And Louis, so I was at CES and I was talking to some of the local Cox folks that were, you know, setting up the venue. They seemed to go over very well. They anticipated the, you know, the increase in traffic. You know, how did that, from your perspective, how did things go? And how about the national college football venue as well?
Well, unfortunately, I wasn't at CES, or fortunately, I was not. So, from our perspective, you know, we have the Las Vegas Convention Center where CES is actually held. To your point about traffic, you know, that's a high volume of traffic coming on. We saw it go well. You know, we did have to deal with certain rogue APs coming in. That's a challenge in terms of trying to maintain a good interference level so that people are not degrading services. But the thing that we're actually exploring in that type of venue, just to add to the whole value services discussion, is when we look at floor space and use of floor space and location, where are the conventioneers actually migrating to in the convention, right? So which booths or what areas are getting the most utilization? Are there certain shows that are being put on that get better value from that standpoint? And what we found is that the venue owners rather want that information, because that one, it helps them plan their floor space. It helps them incentivize maybe premium prices for certain areas on the floor. And then it demonstrates which particular services, if we put the popcorn over here, is that causing a problem over here? Those type things. So the more information that we can provide venue owners through that particular network, in addition to where the bathrooms are, which is high on the list, it definitely helps that experience in terms of the conventioneers coming to that particular area. So the Las Vegas Convention Center and the hosting on the CES event went very well. We saw very good patterns in terms of traffic, and then we're also looking at how can we even bring more value add to that particular network.
And I understand there were some beacon studies on the floor. I don't know if that's something that you can talk about, but you just generically, it'd be great to see the data from venues like that. But I just thought I'd pull that from memory. I don't know if that's something you can speak about.
Yeah, well, we didn't do any beacons. We did do some, trials or experiments with that. We kind of look at beacons from the standpoint of, I would call it geofencing, if you will. So the ability to be able to send a targeted ad to a user as they get into a certain proximity of a certain booth. And then that's a certain type of media that we can actually sell to that particular booth owner from that standpoint. The challenge with beacons is, again, how do you deploy them on that floor space? I mean, that is somewhat of a challenge to get the density and to get the level of sensitivity that you need to be able to deliver those communications, and I'll call them messages, not necessarily ads, but whatever communication or alerts you want to actually deliver, to be able to deliver those in a timely fashion. We also try to do it with Wi-Fi, but the beacons actually are very long, so you can actually transverse 3 or 4 booths before you actually get the message. So there's some improvement that has to happen in terms of how we actually beacon or how we actually communicate using the Wi-Fi protocol.
Okay. And then I've also heard of and seen tags, right, wireless tags to follow the flow of traffic. So there's some unique ideas, and they help plan as well. So.
Yeah, those have actually been in wide use in the medical field for quite some time, mostly for asset tracking. But many hospitals now use it to locate crash carts, keep track of IV pumps, things like that. So the medical industry has been using location services. Probably one of our first adopters was mostly to keep wheelchairs from going out the front door. You'd be surprised how much a wheelchair costs. The Wi-Fi tags have been very interesting. But actually, all our newer indoor product lines are all coming with BLE capability. iBeacon is somebody's trade name, but the BLE capability. So the ability to not only track hyperlocation, but the ability to trigger application-based beacon capabilities in the app.
Okay. Let me start with Louis on this one. What role will Wi-Fi play in the growing IoT space?
Well, as we talked about earlier, because of the price of the chipset on Wi-Fi, the ability to put it in a lot of small devices to that particular standpoint, I think Wi-Fi definitely can provide a role there, particularly when you have things that require two-way communications and are actually sending a lot of data, not necessarily bursty data, but more interactive, high-content data to a great extent. So when you look at Wi-Fi connected cameras, a lot of content going through there. When you look at the connection to the video experience from that standpoint, there are a lot of opportunities, I think, that IoT can actually play in that particular space.
Okay. Jerry, any other observations from your perspective relative to IoT?
Wow. Yeah, this is so overall, we consider, we're getting into this idea of calling ourselves a cable company. We're really a connectivity company. And when you look at the numbers that are rolling in, and there's a whole panel we can put together on, is TV really dying? Is media dying? I mean, there's a lot of different things about that. But the big thing is that the broadband customers are growing, and as more and more devices come online, the growth is linear. So we're going to have to put in more connectivity. There's going to have to be more, which means more servers. More, because, we're going to have 20, 30, 50 IP devices assigned to us. And those experiences have to be good across the board because, as media continues to fragment, that means more and more media is going to be available. And it's going to be available on a lot of different devices. So when we think about what the growth of broadband and the growth of wireless looks like, it's really going to be wireless. Because as you put, and I know I'm going a little bit off topic, but when you start to think about, that TV is really going to become another or put it like this, entertainment from a cable operator or from a national network is going to be just another app on your TV that is going to be connected wireless. So you're not going to be able to put an Ethernet cord through your wall. It's going to be wireless. So, and that experience is going to follow you around. So the same TV that you have, the same TV app that's on your, the big screen, the big iPhone in your living room, is going to be the little iPhone in your hand or the Android tablet, that you run around with. So the experience is going to be a ubiquitous experience no matter what. And so, from a consumer standpoint, I don't care what network I'm on. I want to be able to watch what I want to watch if I'm going to be, on a plane, and and I think GoGo is probably one of the more interesting companies out there because they're they're pushing high-speed broadband now into a plane, which I'm amazed by. There's a Louis C.K. joke that he talks about, the comedian, but he got on a plane to L.A. and realized that the Wi-Fi was broken. Some guy was like, "Oh, that's stupid," and he was like, "You didn't know that didn't even exist a year ago, and you're able to stream stuff on a plane where you're going across country, and it's getting more and more amazing."
Yeah, that's a good one because now it's like anything else, right? What would you do without it? Right now, the 6-hour trip across country becomes
I would rather not have a meal and a drink than not have Wi-Fi on a cross-country trip.
Important choices.
So Wi-Fi is really a complementary technology to IoT, right? It is, as Louis said, it's a ubiquitous technology that's available in many devices. So I think we've seen it in the IoT space for quite some time. I mean, how many people here have a cordless video camera at home, Wi-Fi based, right? It's been out there. There's the cordless doorbell. I don't know if you've seen a commercial. They push a doorbell. It's got the camera in it. Yep. Connecting alarm systems in your house. Lights, etc. So, Wi-Fi has definitely been out there. I think some of the newer technologies you'll see out there, like LoRa and some of the other technologies that are coming out. I think Zigbee, it'll be out there, but I think LoRa will probably end up surpassing that. But, I've said this for quite some time. I've always taken heat on it. But Wi-Fi continues to be and probably will always be the most ubiquitous high-speed wireless connectivity you'll have available to you. And I know 5G is coming. There's probably a lot of cellular guys out here. 5G is coming. But, you'll have the same problem, right? Yep. You have a physics problem. When I'm in the bowels of my house, if I can't get my 5G signal, I'm not going to get the high-speed 5G, but I will be able to have my Wi-Fi in my house, right? So it will be out there to stay. I mean, we've got, municipalities putting up parking meters and things like that off of Wi-Fi. So, IoT has definitely been growing with Wi-Fi technology, but it's a complementary technology for, some of the other standards that are coming to IoT itself.